When I saw the wolf in the clearing, my heart stopped because I knew this wasn't an accident. I was halfway down the rutted track behind my cabin, arms full of firewood, breath smoking in the cold. The birches were bare, and the snow had a skin of ice that cracked under my boots. I looked up, and he was there, gray against the white, still as a stone, and looking straight at me. I thought he would flick an ear, turn, and vanish into the pines, and I could tell myself it was nothing. I thought that was the end of it, but he did not move. He held my eyes, calm, unblinking. I felt the old tremor in my legs, the old taste of iron in my mouth. I live quiet now, at the edge of the woods. I keep to myself. I split wood, fix my fence, and walk to the well before dawn so I do not meet anyone. It is how I learned to be after the camp, after I ran. You do not ask for kindness in this world. You learn to pass like smoke. The wolf took one step toward me, slow, deliberate, like he was testing the ground for both of us. My breath caught and turned into a cough. He was larger than any I had seen in this valley, heavy through the shoulders, winter coat thick, a fringe of frost on his whiskers. And there, at the edge of his left ear, a nick like a torn notch. My chest tightened. The cold did not cause it. 8 years ago, I ran through a different kind of snow under a different sky. There were dogs on my scent and men behind the dogs, and I could hear them the way you hear your own blood when fear is loud. I stumbled into a ravine and clawed up the other side and slid on my knees beneath low spruce. When I pulled myself up, I saw a young gray wolf ahead of me on the path. He stood sideways, blocking the trail. He did not snarl. He did not show his teeth. He looked at me, the way you look at someone you know will break if you push them. He blinked, slow. Then he turned and trotted across the stream. I followed without thinking. Water up to my knees, the cold biting the bones, the sound of the river swallowing my scent. The dogs lost me there. The wolf melted into the brush as if I had dreamed him. The wolf in the clearing had the same torn ear. It was an old wound now, thickened by time. He lifted his head a little, like he knew I had seen it. A gust moved through the birches. He did not startle. I set the wood down on my boot so it would not fall loud. My hands shook. He looked at me like I was one of his own. I told myself it was only the light, only a shape my mind wanted to fit into the one shape that had once meant mercy. I told myself there are many gray wolves and many torn ears and many minds that make patterns out of pain, but the part of me that had lived when I should not have lived was already answering him. He stepped off the trail, paw by paw, placing his feet like a dancer. He cut a half circle in the snow and came to stand between me and the dark of the trees, the same way he had stood between me and the dogs. A small sound came from him then, not a growl, not a whine, a brief push of breath, like a question. My throat closed. I could not move. I took one step. His ears tipped forward. He did not retreat. He watched the space around us as if he were listening for something I could not hear. Somewhere a jay screamed and then went silent, and the quiet after felt like a held note. I took another step, slow, careful, the way you approach a ledge when you are not sure the rock will hold. He turned his head and showed me his flank, and the hair there had a dark seam of scar beneath the fur. The scar told a story I did not want to read. It looked like a wire or a trap had once tried to claim him. He had survived that too. My eyes burned in the cold. He walked 3 paces, stopped, and looked back. His tail hung level, not high, not low. His mouth was closed. He was not hungry for me. He was waiting. I knew the feeling of being led. I had followed him once and lived. The road behind me was safe and small. The space ahead of him felt like a door I did not know if I could open. "I remember you," I heard myself say, though my voice did not sound like mine. My words smoked and blew away. He blinked once, so slow it broke something in me. Memory rose like steam out of the old wound, and I smelled wet spruce and old leather and fear. I saw the young wolf standing in the stream, water sheeting around his legs, turning his head to see if I was brave enough to step where he stepped. The dogs on the far bank howling with their whole bodies, then losing the line, milling, confused, the men shouting, the sky wide and gray and terrible, the wolf lifting his nose and tasting the air and then vanishing. A branch popped in the cold. I flinched. The wolf kept his place. I felt both pulled and held, grateful and afraid, small and seen, and it is a strange thing to be seen and not hunted. It unhooks your knees. I wanted to go to him, and I wanted to run. Both truths were in me at the same time and fought like brothers. He took another step, and I saw other shapes further back in the trees, low and quiet and watching. Not close, not pressing. A set of eyes, then another. He had a family now. He was not the lone gray I had once known. He was a leader, and he had brought them near, and he had not hidden me from them. The shock of that went through my ribs. For a breath I thought I should turn, pick up my wood, and go home, close my door, and call it a story I made from a winter shadow. I thought that would be wiser. I thought if I walked away now, I could put the world back where it was. But he took one more step, and the choice left me. He lowered his head and pressed his nose to the snow. He made a small trench with his paw, 2 strokes, like marking a place. He stood back and looked at me, and the message was as clear to me as a road sign. Come, see, trust. I felt the old fear try to climb back up my spine. I felt the old gratitude meet it halfway and refuse to move. I left the wood where it lay and walked to him until I could see the frost on his whiskers and the gold around his pupils. He smelled like cold and pine and something wild that has no name but still lives in the bones of men who have slept with one eye open. My knees were shaking, but my feet held. He turned and slipped toward the trees, not fast, not slow, always looking back to be sure I did not fall behind. The others faded deeper into the dark, like breath into cloth. I followed as far as the lip of the clearing, and then I stopped. He paused too and waited, patient as weather. He would not force me. He would not explain. He had never explained. Maybe I should have gone home. Maybe I should have told myself there are no second miracles. Maybe I should have kept my quiet life and my small fire and my closed door. I told myself it was only chance, only winter, only a wolf in a valley full of wolves. I told myself all the things men tell themselves when wonder knocks, and they are afraid to answer. I thought it was just a coincidence. The memory came back hard and cold, the way breath hurts when you run in winter. Hunger had been a steady drum then, not an ache, a law. My tongue felt like wood. My boots were too big and still too tight. Every step burned and slipped. Behind me, the dogs spoke in short, savage bursts, and the men behind them answered with metal and curses. Snow threw the sound back at us. The forest heard everything. I kept telling myself one more step, then one more step, then water, then dark, then gone. But the dogs were close. They could count the beats of my heart by the smell of it. Out of the spruce, a young gray wolf slid onto the trail, like a shadow deciding to be flesh. He did not lower his head. He did not lift his lip. He stood broadside, the full width of him placed between me and the throats behind me. It was a simple thing, the way a door can seem simple until you try it and find it locked. He was a door. He looked at me, calm, steady, not asking, not warning. The same eyes that now, 8 years later, held me in the clearing. The same torn ear, raw then, healed now. The dogs came to the bend and saw him. Their bodies bunched. They made their noises, the ones that mean heat and blood. Then the lead hound's tail dropped a notch. He tasted the air and did not like what it told him. Another dog's voice cracked and went thin, a boy's voice breaking. The young wolf did not move. He stood there with the quiet of something that knows exactly what it is. He did not need to be big, he needed to be sure. The dogs felt it. One by one they lost height. They milled, backing water into their own tracks. The men shouted, the line broke. I thought then that the wolf was only guarding his ground. I was nothing to him. I was a stray thing crossing a line he would not let others cross. Territory, instinct, luck. I told myself all that later when I could breathe without tasting iron. It helped me sleep. Even now, with him in front of me in the clearing, older, heavy through the chest, I tried to fit him back into that box. I decided the animal simply hadn't recognized me, but he did the same impossible, ordinary thing. He eased himself between me and the dark where the other eyes hovered. He placed his body as a hinge between my small life and the wild that does not owe men a single breath. His head turned enough to keep me and the trees inside the same circle. It was a century's measure. It was exactly what he had done with the dogs, only now the dogs were ghosts, and I was the one being kept in place. My throat went tight. I did not feel brave. I felt seen. The wind shifted. He lifted his nose and read it. A soft chuff left his mouth, a sound not for me, and somehow for me. I remembered the pain of hunger back then, the way it erased the edges of the world until all that was left was the next root, the next crust, the next swallow that might not come. I had stumbled into that stream because he set his feet there, and the water stole my scent. And that was the difference between a grave and a future. The river had taken pity on me because he had. I could not explain it then. I cannot explain it now. But standing there with his breath a small cloud in the cold, I felt the old seam in my life open. I shifted my weight, and his ears tipped, not alarmed, a question. He moved one paw and scratched a shallow line in the crust of snow, 2 quick strokes, then stepped back and looked at me full on. My heart banged once, hard. He was showing me something. It was nothing. It was everything. Come here, stand here. Do not cross that. Stand with me. The meanings piled on each other like firewood. I took off a glove to show my empty hand. The air bit at my skin. He watched the glove, not the hand, as if he understood the tool mattered more than the flesh. Then his gaze came back to my face. There was no heat in it, no hunger, no boredom. There was only the quiet pressure of being measured and not being found wanting. He looked at me like I was his own, and my knees went weak. A jay cracked the sky with its anger, and the shapes in the trees shifted once, then settled. He didn't flinch. He never once put his teeth into the air to show me who he was. He never once showed me the theater of fear. He stood and made space where there shouldn't have been space. He let me be part of his circle without dragging me into it. That was the turn I didn't expect. He was not pushing me away. He was not pulling me in. He was holding a place for me, as if a thing like me could belong anywhere near him. I remembered the camp, the way belonging had been used like a weapon, the way a man could be made to forget he was a man if you told him often enough. In the forest, there were no words. There was only the truth of how bodies stand, and how eyes soften, and how breath leaves the mouth when danger is near. In that grammar, he told me, I was not danger. In that grammar, I believed him. I tried again to make it small, a habit, a defense. Wolves are clever. Wolves are cautious. Wolves read wind and ground and posture. He was doing what wolves do. He was doing what saved him. And me? I was a tree he did not mind, a rock that did not move. I tried to make it that, and for a breath I almost could. Then he stepped closer, 1 pace, 2, enough that I could hear the faint click of his claws through the crust, enough that I could see frost rimming the scar along his ear. He lowered his head and breathed toward my bare hand, not touching, and in that space between us, I felt the world tilt. The dogs had once turned back. Now a wild thing turned toward me. The same eyes, 8 winters older, offering me a place that did not exist yesterday. I felt fear and gratitude climb the same ladder inside my ribs. They stood there together, and I did not know which one would reach the roof first. He looked past me then, into the open where the track ran down to my cabin, and then back to the trees, and then to me, as if keeping time in 3 beats. The beat I knew, the beat I didn't, the beat that was coming. I swallowed. The air was thin. I thought, again, that I should end it here. Go back, close the door, call the clearing a trick of light and the past a fever, tell myself he hadn't known me, tell myself I had imagined that small breath of greeting. It would have been easier. It would have kept the world the same size. I didn't move, and he didn't either. He waited like weather, like a question that would not go away. I did not yet know what he wanted me to see. I did not yet know what line he was asking me to cross. He closed the space between us without a sound, no growl, no show of teeth. He came to a stop close enough that I could see the neat scallops his paws left in the crusted snow. Then he folded his legs and sat, back straight, tail laid along the ground like a length of rope. He was not guarding. He was not begging. He was waiting. I thought that would be the end of it, that he would sit until I backed away and we would return to our separate lives. I was wrong. His breath puffed in short white clouds. His ears tipped toward me and then relaxed. The muscles along his shoulders loosened the way a door eases on good hinges. He looked at me, calm, direct, the way you look at someone you already know. The cold bit the skin of my face and made my eyes water, and still I could not look away. I tried to name what was happening so I could make it smaller. A cautious animal at rest, a measured distance, nothing more, nothing. But my hands remembered first. They remembered another night, another cold, the kind that bites through wet cloth and finds the bones. I had been a man with no plan, but forward, and no food, but a heel of bread I had kept inside my coat like a secret. I remember sliding under a spruce, ribs shaking, listening for the dogs to fix my trail. When I lifted my head, there was a young gray wolf standing where the snow gave way to the stream. He did not come closer. He did not drive me off. He watched me tremble, and then he looked at the water. That was when I took the bread out, not because I thought to feed him, but because I needed to remember I was human. I broke the heel in half with stiff fingers and held a piece out, palm up, foolish as a child. He did not snatch it. He waited, as if my hand were a question and I had not yet spoken. I took a bite first, hard and dry, the bread turning to dust on my tongue, the taste of it waking me like a slap. Only after that did he lean in, so slow I could hear the small click of a claw through ice, and take the other half with the soft part of his mouth. His breath was warm on my skin. He turned his head as he took it, careful, like he was mindful of my bones. Then he put his feet in the stream and sent my scent downstream to die. Standing in the clearing now, I reached into the pocket of my coat. I keep a small piece of bread there for long mornings at the woodpile. My fingers closed on it like they knew what to do. I brought it out and set it on the snow between us, an even distance from his paws and my boots. He watched my hands, not my face, the way he had before. He looked once toward the trees, then back to me, and did not move. I understood him then, in the only grammar we shared. I picked the bread up again. I tore off a mouthful and chewed until the stale edge gave way. I swallowed and felt the heat of it sit in my chest. He waited until the swallow was finished. Then he slid forward, lowered his head, and took the rest with the same soft care as long ago. He set it down, nudged it back toward my boot with his nose, and lifted his eyes to mine. He looked at me like I was his own. Something in me that had been frozen for years broke and ran free. I had to clamp my jaw to keep from making a sound. I told myself this was habit, not memory, a pattern of safety learned in a hard world. Eat after the other mouth eats, share without bleeding for it. I told myself he could not remember a night from 8 winters ago, one trembling man among 1,000 smells, one small mercy done on the edge of a black stream. I told myself that because it was easier to believe in instinct than in recognition. But the torn ear was the same, the slow blink was the same, the patience was the same, and the waiting for me to eat first was not chance. It was a thread pulled through time. He shifted his weight and sat straighter, a sentry at rest. His eyes cut once to the timberline where the dark held its own breath. I felt the prickle of other eyes on my skin and could not say how many. 2, 4, more. They did not come. He made no sound to call them. He kept his place and kept me inside it, as if the circle around us had walls I could not see. Every part of me wanted to step closer. Every part of me wanted to run. Both truths stood inside the same heartbeat and would not give way. I crouched, slowly, palms open, so he could read my bones. He did not retreat. He tracked the small lowering of my body with a tilt of his head. I touched the snow with 2 fingers, not to reach for him, only to anchor myself to something that would not lie. The cold burned. "Thank you," I said, because there was nothing else that would fit in my mouth. The word smoked and vanished. He blinked once. It felt like an answer. I tried to swallow the thought that he knew me. I tried to pack it away like a hot coal and close the lid. Animals do not carry men in their minds, I told myself, not across seasons, not across hunger and death and the long quiet. But he kept looking at me with that steady, measuring calm, and the part of me that had stared into his eyes in the river's noise answered back without asking permission. He rocked up to his feet in one smooth motion, shook a dusting of ice from his coat without breaking our line, and then sat again, closer than before. The whites at the corners of his eyes showed for a breath as he turned his head toward the woods and back. I felt the pull of that small movement, like a hand on my sleeve. Come. Wait. Come. Not yet. He was knitting me to something I could not see. The open place in me filled with a sound that was not quite fear and not quite joy. I stood because he had stood. My knees popped loud in the cold, and the noise went nowhere. He did not flinch. He breathed once, twice, like a man steadying himself before lifting weight. Then nothing, only the quiet, only his gaze holding me in it. I told myself he had gotten what he wanted, that this small exchange was all, that he would rise and fade back into the trees, and I would go home and tell myself I'd read too much into a hungry animal and a piece of bread. I thought that was the end of it. He turned without sound and slid into the trees, the way wind changes direction and you feel it before you see it. He glanced back once, eyes finding me, then moved again, brushing through young fur like water. I did not think. My legs followed. My breath went shallow, a small animal hiding in my chest. I told myself to stop. I told myself to go home. My feet did not listen. He set a pace that matched the beat of my fear, never fast enough to lose me, never slow enough to let me think. Each time the brush thickened, he looked over his shoulder and waited, then flowed ahead. Branches stitched lines across my coat. Ice broke underfoot with the dry snap of old bones. The smell changed. Pine, cold earth, the faint iron of something long dead. He threaded between boulders and dropped into a shallow draw where the snow lay unbroken. His tracks opened the white like writing. We climbed a small rise, and the woods opened all at once. A bowl of silence, a clearing ringed with spruce. The light there had a hush to it, like church after the door closes. He walked out into that hush and stopped. Shapes lifted from the edge of the trees, one by one, not rushing, not hiding. Eyes, tails held level, breath making pale commas in the air. The pack. I froze. My throat closed around a prayer I did not know I remembered. The big gray, my gray, stood between me and them, his body not tense, his head level. He looked at me the way he had looked at the dogs years ago, not to threaten, but to hold the world in order. Another wolf, darker, younger, eased left and then settled. A rangy male tested the wind and licked his nose. No sound, no growl. The quiet had weight. Then she came out. She was pale along the ribs and darker at the shoulders, winter thick and spare at once, eyes the color of old honey. A scar stitched her flank where some wire or tooth had written its claim and been denied. She stood 3 paces behind the gray, looked at me, and then looked down at the brush, as if considering the ground itself. She turned her head and made a sound, not meant for me, soft, a breath with a question in it. From the shadow, small bodies poured like a secret being told. Pups, their legs all joints and tremble, ears too big for their faces, pelts a mess of colors. They came out in a wash and stopped, bewildered by open space. One bumbled into another, and the second sat with the shock of it, as if the world had pushed back. The she-wolf touched the first with her nose, a quick correction, then lifted her head toward me. She did the unthinkable. She stepped aside. She did not place herself between me and the pups. She placed herself beside them, angling her body so that the straight line between me and what she loved most was open. The gray held his station, eyes cutting to the young males at the edge when one shifted, a look that said, "Hold." I felt every hair on my body rise and lift like grass in a wind. My hands went numb. Hot filled my eyes. Fear and gratitude crashed into each other so hard inside me, I thought my ribs would crack. She was offering me what any wild thing hides. One pup skittered forward on clumsy paws, stopped, and stared, head tilting, gold eyes wide. He took a step, another. He sniffed and sneezed at the sting of my scent, then tried again, curiosity winning against the world. He reached my boot and placed one paw on the leather, light as a moth. I did not move. I did not breathe. The gray watched the edge of the clearing. The she-wolf watched me. She looked at me like I belonged there. He looked at me like I was his own. Something in me broke open. Tears came without warning, hot and clean, cutting tracks down skin the cold had made numb. I hated the sound of myself crying, the way it lived beside the sound of dogs and boots and metal in my memory. I could not stop it. The pup's whiskers ticked. He tasted the salt as if learning another word. I did not reach out. The she-wolf did not flinch. She blinked, slow, and in that blink, I saw a life I had not believed I was allowed. A world where a wild mother could decide I was not a knife, where a leader could hold back the teeth at his command and keep a place open in his circle for a thin man with bad boots and a heart that had been a locked room for too long. My knees went weak. I knelt because I could not stand. The pup stepped onto my knee, slid, corrected, as serious as a craftsman about his work. Another pup dared a little closer, then stopped with the sudden certainty that he was brave enough for only so much today. The she-wolf breathed, and the breath was permission and warning both. The gray turned his head a fraction when a subordinate forgot himself and angled forward, and the forgetting died without sound. The whole clearing was a held note. I felt hunted by kindness. It rattled me more than teeth ever had. I wanted to bare my throat and also to hide it. I wanted to laugh and then lie down in the snow and sleep for a year. Every part of me was breaking and mending at the same time. I put my palm open on my own knee so they could read me. No move, no greed, only a quiet that asked for nothing. The small paw pressed into the meat of my hand and left a print of melt. It was so light it hurt. I thought of the night by the river, bread turning to dust in my mouth, a young wolf stepping into the water and taking my scent with him into the black. I thought of the years since, of talking to no one and learning to be a shadow, of waking from dreams with my teeth shut hard. I had told myself that mercy was an accident. Now a mother was placing her young within reach of my fingers. Around us the trees held their breath. A crow crossed high and did not speak. The sky leaned close. I wanted to believe this was only caution. A trap of instincts crossed. A map I could still fold back into something I understood. I told myself I should stand, back away slow, leave whatever miracle this was untested, untouched. I told myself nature was showing me a mask, and behind it were only rules written in hunger and snow. I was sure this was nature's trap. I stayed. I don't know why. My knees were wet through and the cold was climbing. But I didn't move. The pack didn't drive me off. No hackles, no teeth. The big gray stood steady, and the others watched like stones that breathed. The clearing held us like a bowl. I told myself I should back away now while I still could, take the path, close my door, make this into a story I could fold and put in a pocket. I thought this was a sign of farewell. It wasn't. A small pup broke rank with all the clumsy courage in the world and came on a straight line, hips swaying, ears too big for his head. He stopped at my boot, sniffed, sneezed at the human sting, then set one soft paw on the leather as if testing whether I was real. The touch was almost nothing. It went through me like a nail. The she-wolf flicked her eyes, and the pup checked himself, but she did not call him back. She did the opposite. She eased her weight and made space. The gray kept his body between me and the young males who let curiosity get ahead of sense. One glance from him, and they remembered themselves. I knelt without thinking, palms open on my thighs so they could read my bones. The pup's whiskers ticked as he took in the salt on my skin. He made a small sound, half question, half satisfaction, and leaned his weight into my boot like a child who has decided the chair will hold. I looked up and met the mother's gaze. There was such a plea in her eyes that I cried. It wasn't fear. It wasn't threat. It was the terrible, simple request of a living thing. Understand me. Do not hurt what I show you. See what I am trusting you with. My throat closed around a sound I did not want to make. I blinked hard and saw, as clear as if it were now, the night 8 winters ago when a younger version of the gray had stepped into my life and changed its shape. I had staggered along the ravine lip, breath burning, dogs turning the snow into a map of my mistakes. He came out of the brush like a shadow choosing a body and put himself broadside on the trail. The dog saw him and hesitated, just a hiccup, and in that hiccup he moved. Not toward me, toward them. He cut the wind with his body so his scent hit them full, then peeled away uphill, trotting easy with his head low, tail level, not fleeing, inviting. The hounds' voices changed the way a song turns when a better melody comes in. They left my thin line and took his hot one like a promise. He led them into the broken timber where the creek braided and turned and braided again, a place that makes fools out of noses. By the time the men figured the switch, the stream had my smell and he had their attention, and I was on my knees under spruce with a crust of bread in my mouth and a future I had no right to. Back in the clearing, the gray flicked an ear as if he had heard the memory move inside me. He looked at the pups, then at me, and the shape of the moment finally fit. He had brought me here to show me this. Not to test me, not to warn me off, to present what the wild hides unless it chooses otherwise, his family, his claim, the fact of his survival pulled forward into small, trembling bodies. The understanding landed so hard my breath caught. Gratitude and fear climbed the same ladder in my ribs and met at the top. The she-wolf stepped a pace closer, head low, eyes steady. Her scar showed where some snare or tooth had tried to write her ending and failed. She looked at me again with that same raw appeal, and I felt my face go hot with shame and awe. I whispered, "I see," because it was all I had. The wind shifted and lifted a thread of smell from the trees, old metal, rust. The gray's head turned a fraction toward the darker timber beyond the ring of spruce. A note I couldn't hear passed through the pack. Bodies eased, then held. He looked back at me. The message was there even if I could not read it yet. Another pup crept forward, braver on the first one's success, then sat hard when the snow surprised him. His paw slid into my open palm and left a wet print that stung like truth. The mother didn't blink. The gray watched the edges, counting the breaths of his males without moving his lips. The quiet had weight. It pressed on my chest until I thought I would break. I wanted to reach out and stroke a small head and also to pull my hand back like fire. I wanted to laugh at the ridiculousness of it and also to bury my face in the snow until everything in me went numb. I did none of it. I let the small paw rest and lifted my eyes to the she-wolves once more. The plea was still there, and something else with it, an instruction I could not yet name. I felt foolish and holy at the same time. The pup withdrew, wobbling, and tumbled back to his mother's chest. She nosed him, not rough, and then looked past me toward the path I had come by, then back to the dark trees where the wind carried that thin iron smell. The gray matched the motion, a quiet double beat. Me, trees, me. I felt the pull of it the way you feel a tug on your sleeve when someone you trust wants you to look. No one pushed me away. No one ended it. Minutes went by and the bowl of the clearing held. The pack reset. Two lay down, one yawned, another turned once and tucked his tail over his nose. The world did not explode. A wild mother had placed her young within reach of my fingers and the sky had not fallen. The tremor in my hands eased enough that I could breathe without tasting metal. I told myself this must be the farewell. He had shown me the proof of his life, the reason he had stood between me and the teeth, the debt paid out loud so it could be counted and closed. I thought he was granting me a last kindness before the door swung shut and the woods ate the path behind me. I thought it was goodbye. The gray looked one more time toward the darker timber and then back at me, and I knew I was wrong. He had not finished asking. He had not yet shown me what he needed me to see. The iron in the wind waited like a word I had not learned. That night I could not sleep. The stove ticked as it cooled, counting a slow time that would not pass. I lay on top of the blanket with my boots still by the door, like a promise I had made to myself and did not want to keep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the clearing, the pups, the mother's scar, the gray holding the edge like a gate, then the wind turning and carrying that thin iron smell from the dark timber. I sat up twice. I drank water I did not want. I told myself this was where the story should end, with a miracle left unhandled so it would not break. My body did not believe me. Before dawn I gave up. I put bread in my pocket like a superstition, pulled on my coat, and stepped into the brittle dark. The snow had hardened in the night. It held my weight with a crust that cracked just enough to make a small, honest sound. I took the lane to the woods and stopped at the bend where the birches start. He was already there, a gray shape cut out of the dim, torn ear like a notch against the sky. He did not come to me. He turned, looked back once, and moved into the trees. I followed. The cold burned my teeth. Breath made smoke that raced ahead and vanished. He kept to a line I wouldn't have seen, between saplings, around deadfall, across a strip of old snow where elk had punched holes weeks ago, and the holes had filled with ice and then another skin of snow. He checked on me with his eyes, not his feet, a leader keeping count without slowing. When the ground fell away, he took a slant that eased my knees. When the brush thickened, he threaded the easiest seam. It felt like walking a memory I hadn't had yet. The sound came first, thin under the snow like a whisper, water moving. He took us into a tangle of alder and willow, and then out onto a narrow bench above a creek that ran black under a lace of ice. He stopped where a fallen birch leaned like a white bone over the channel. He stood very still, nose working, then stepped down to the edge and pawed away the sugar crust with 2 clean strokes. He sat. He waited. I climbed down, careful. The smell hit me before I saw it. Cold earth, old leaf, and the metallic breath of rust. He had cleared a shallow oval in the snow. In it, thin white lengths lay scattered, not arranged and not quite random, as if the land had set them there with patience and time, a curve like a bowl, and next to it a broken stick of something that was not wood. Near the edge, a dark loop of wire showed, furred with years. A shred of gray cloth had caught on the bark of the fallen birch and frozen there into a stiff flag. My mouth went dry. All the hunger of those years returned at once, and with it the taste of iron I thought I had outrun. The gray did not look at the bones. He looked at me. His eyes were steady and without heat, holding me to the moment the way a hand holds you at the wrist when you might fall. He had brought me to the place where a man had ended. He had brought me to remember. I knelt because my legs would not keep me up. The cold bit through wool and skin until it was part of me. I reached toward the scrap of cloth and stopped, my hand hanging there, ashamed like a thief. I did not touch what was not mine to touch. The wire told the rest. It had once been a loop around flesh, maybe a snare, maybe a patch of old fence rolled by flood and caught on a root, maybe a piece of the same world I had run from that night, left here by men who built the fences and the camps and the rules. The creek murmured as if it were tired of hearing it. He shifted once and my eyes found him again. He was not afraid. He was not eager. He was watchful in a way that made space. He leaned forward, breathed once over the small field of white, and sat back, the way a mourner might put a hand on a stone and then fold it away. A young male eased out of the alder to look, and the gray stopped him with nothing but a glance. Not here. Not this. He was keeping a boundary around the dead. My heart hurt in a way I did not have a word for. It was horror and awe climbing the same ladder inside my ribs and meeting at the top. I thought of the men who had run and not made it. I thought of the dogs when they realized they have found only water. I thought of the night a younger wolf had taken my scent into the creek and traded it for his own. I thought, maybe he had come to this bank before me in other winters and stood where he stands now and learned the story by smell. Maybe he had kept this place with his body so the living would not tear it apart without knowing. Maybe he was telling me, remember him. Do not let him be only bone. The creek lifted a thread of air and it ran through me like a wire. I swallowed and said, I see, because there was nothing else to say. My voice sounded wrong in the trees. The gray blinked, slow. He looked from me to the bones, to the strip of alder where the wind had carried the iron smell the day before. There was a message in that triangle, and I understood only part of it. The rest waded upstream like a word I had not learned. I set a piece of bread on the birch and broke it with my own teeth before I left the other half on the bark, a small foolish gesture that embarrassed me even as I did it. He watched and did not touch it. This was not about hunger. This was about holding a line around a story so it would not be lost. He had shown me a grave that had no name. He had shown me that a wild thing could carry the dead in its memory. I stood, legs shaking, and backed away, eyes down until I found my footing in the brush. The creek whispered. The alder clicked. No one followed. I told myself right then I would never come back here, that I would let the place keep its quiet and keep my house and my small safety and close the door on all of it. But when I looked up, he was already moving, not downstream toward home, but along the bank into thicker willow, head low, ears forward, checking that I was watching. He had not finished. There was more he needed me to see. They moved with me along the creek, not pressing, not drifting away. I felt them on both sides the way you feel weather closing in, soft, sure, everywhere. The gray kept a half pace ahead, glancing back with the quick cut of an eye that counted me without making a fuss of it. A young male ranged to my right and then held when the leader's ear twitched. Behind, the brush breathed, and pups clicked through sticks and then were quiet again. No growls, no theater, only a rhythm, pack and man, matched to the same beat. I waited for the fear to come back and take my knees. It didn't. Something else settled where fear used to live. We followed the water until it broke into braids and the snow opened into bars of gravel. The gray chose the easy seams, the ones that would not punch through the crust and throw me. When the alder thickened, he threaded the gap and let his shoulder brush a branch to show me the line. He was not showing off. He was making space. I felt, clear as a hand on my back, that I had been added. Not a guest, not a hostage. Counted. I tested the thought, and it held. When a raven came low and scolded, 2 yearlings looked up, then down, then up again, waiting for instruction. The instruction was me. The gray slid his gaze across them, and then across me, and the line we made together steadied them. The she-wolf ghosted along the left edge, never far from the pups, and in the small pauses, she checked me with a look I felt in my ribs, not suspicion, a strange, fierce kind of inventory. Are you steady? Are you seeing? Are you here? We crossed a shallow run where the ice wore lace, and I went first because the gray set his feet and waited until I tested it. My boot cracked through and I gasped, and 3 heads turned at once, bodies soft but ready. I laughed, a small stupid noise, and waved my hand, and the tension drained out of the air like water out of a hoofprint. It was ordinary, and it wrecked me. I had not been ordinary to anyone in years. They brought me to a flat under spruce where wind had piled snow into a low lip, and there they fanned into a loose half circle as if we owned the place. The gray took the center. I stood off to his right because that is where there was a space, and no one corrected me. The pups tumbled and then remembered themselves and lay with their chins on their paws, eyes too big for their faces, watching everything. The she-wolf slipped away without a sound. She went like a thought you can't hold, and I only noticed because the gray's ear tipped the way a needle finds north. A minute stretched. 2. The air had that iron thread in it again, faint but there, and it drew a line through the trees I had not learned to read. I told myself this was enough, that the morning had already been larger than my chest could hold, that I could go now and keep it whole by not touching it any more than I had. I almost turned. Brush hissed. She came back low and sure, with something dark in her mouth, something that steamed in the cold. Hair, hindquarter torn clean. She moved past the eager faces without a sound, set it with care at my feet, and stepped back, head low, eyes steady. She did not look at the others. She looked at me, my mouth filled with heat and salt and memory. I saw a heel of bread in my hands in the black toe of a stream. I saw a young gray watching me until I ate first, then taking what I offered with the soft part of his mouth. I heard dogs lose their minds to a better trail, and men swear, and the water say, "Mine, mine, mine." I felt my stomach remember empty. It bent me in half from the inside. I started crying before I could stop it. I don't like the sound I make when I cry. It belongs to another time. I heard it anyway. The gray did not shift. The yearlings did not creep. The pups did not whine. The whole pack held that gift like a bowl between their paws and my boots. I knelt because there was no other way to be near it. The meat steamed into my face. I did what I had learned. I tore a mouthful, chewed, swallowed, made myself human first, even if I was only borrowing the part. Only then did I touch it again and push a bit back toward her, the smallest thing I could offer to say I understood. She nosed it once, not eating, and then laid her jaw near my hand and breathed. The heat of it went through skin and bone. They shared with me what they hardly had themselves. The sentence rose whole and sat in me like a stone in a river, water moving hard around it, and still it did not budge. Shame and awe climbed the same ladder in my chest and met at the top and shook hands like old enemies surprised to find they knew the same song. I could not look any of them in the eye for a breath. Then I did, and nothing in their faces said debt, only a quiet, fierce rightness, as if this was not charity, as if this was what family looks like when nobody has the words. I took another small bite, because ritual matters. I set the rest back where she had put it. The gray shifted his weight so a yearling could step in, and in 2 neat moves, the gift became breakfast for everyone. Passed clean, no snarl, no greedy lunge, nothing wasted. A pup tried to be 2 inches braver than his legs allowed, and the she-wolf checked him with a touch you would miss if you blinked, then looked at me again. It hit me the way an old scar sometimes speaks in weather. She was still asking something, not for herself, not for me, for the line that had run from the bones at the creek to this steaming hair between our feet. We started moving again, a slow drift that felt like prayer. I kept the place to the gray's right because the space kept asking me to fill it. He paced me without a word. Every time I misstepped, a body adjusted and the shape of us held. I could feel the edges of their circle include me and a part of me that had lived shut as a fist unclenched finger by finger. I have never been given a seat at a table I did not make. I have never been fed like that. I have never been carried like a small flame inside a ring of breath. For a long stretch, I thought this must be it, the ceiling of wonder, the top of the stair. I thought nothing in the world could ask more of me or give more back than that piece of meat warm in my palm and a mother's eyes holding mine like a rope over water. I thought that was the limit of the impossible. I started walking into the woods almost every day, not far, not deep, just enough to find the line where the creek begins to talk and the spruce hold the wind. Most days the gray found me first. He would appear out of the dark like a thought I had forgotten, glance once to count me, and turn so I could fall into step. I told myself I'd learned the rules, that this was all there was. Walk in, get counted, walk out. I thought I understood everything about nature. They didn't just tolerate me. They fit me into the shape they already were. The gray kept me to his right, as if a space had been waiting. Yearlings tested the edge, then remembered their manners at a flick of his ear. The mother moved like a quiet river around the pups, checking me with those eyes that held plea and steel at once. I learned the seams in the brush they favored, the shallows in the creek that didn't collapse. I learned to stop when they stopped, to look where they looked, to breathe when the air went tight. One morning, the light had the color of tin. Snow squeaked under my boots. The pack formed around me without hurry. We took the long side of the alder flat where the creek braids. I could feel how the bodies arranged. The gray a half pace ahead, the mother left with the pups, the young males fanned wide. It felt like a room I had lived in for years and only now noticed the furniture. The wind shifted and carried a sound thin and sharp, not our pack's feet, not our breath, a quick, ragged beat of panic. The gray lifted his head. The mother froze with one paw tucked. The yearlings turned to wire. I tasted metal in the air, old fear finding a path. Between willow wands I saw it, a fawn, spots long gone but still small, snow to the belly, breaking wrong, breaking loud, with 2 strange wolves angling to cut it off. Not ours. Their coats were coarse with travel. Their mouths hung. This was the world as it is. I braced for the lesson I did not want. The gray did something I still don't know how to hold. He left our line and went straight toward the noise, not with the spring of a hunter, but with the flat, certain stride he used when he put himself between me and teeth. He put his body across the fawn's path, not to stop it, but to bend it. His shoulder touched the deer's ribs like a hand guiding someone through a crowd. He blocked the angle the strangers wanted. He didn't show his teeth. He didn't rush. He set a wall where there hadn't been one. The strangers checked, confused by a leader that did not call the feast. One tried to swing wide for a flank and met the mother's stare like a door. The gray held the center, and the air in the willows turned into a held breath. The fawn skittered, slipped, found rock, then shot past the gray's back hip and into a slot of alder. I wouldn't have noticed if I'd been staring straight at it. A clean seam, a seam I knew because he had taught me to see it. The fawn was gone. The two outsiders hesitated, then let the moment fall. The gray didn't chase, he didn't claim. He stood and looked at them until the idea left their bodies. Then he turned his head and looked at me. I could not make my legs hold the weight of what I had seen. Fear and belief climbed the same ladder inside my chest and met at the top. The world said wolf and deer, hunger and blood. He had just written another word on the same page. I could hear boots and snow from years ago, and dogs going insane at a better scent and water saying mine. And now this, mercy, not by accident of timing, but by choice of body. He looked at me like I was his own, and I knew he was teaching me in the only language I could read. Where you place yourself decides what lives. If your heart is pounding right now, you know what I mean. Subscribe. Here, I tell the truth about nature's miracles, the kind you feel in your bones. The outsiders moved off with that loose, false casual gait that admits defeat without saying it. The mother exhaled so softly, I would have missed it if my whole life hadn't been in my ears. The yearlings uncoiled a fraction. The pups, who hadn't seen the fawn, sneezed at the cold and pressed noses into fur. The gray came back to me, not close enough to touch, close enough to feel the heat of him in the air. He checked the line of our bodies and set us moving again like nothing had happened at all. I walked with them and felt the ground under me change. I had thought survival was a straight rule you could write in stone. Eat or be eaten, chase or be chased, push or be pushed. I had lived by that rule. I had used it to keep my heart small and safe. The gray had just broken the rule and somehow made the world steadier, not wilder. I didn't know where to put that. It scared me, and it steadied me at the same time. The day ran on in ordinary ways that were not ordinary anymore. We crossed where the ice would hold. We stopped where the wind told us a story and listened until it finished. The mother touched a pup with her chin, and he lay down as if the earth had asked him personally. A raven landed and walked, black feet making black stamps on the crust, and the gray let him be inside our circle for a breath and then sent him on with a look. Every small thing said, "The line is not teeth, the line is care." I thought of the creek and the bones and the wire and the unnamed man. I thought of the hair laid at my boots when I didn't deserve it. I thought of the fawn's ribs under the gray's shoulder and how a body can redirect a story without tearing anything. A heat rose behind my eyes and I let it come because there was nothing in this pack that needed me to be hard. We turned for home without words. The line we made through the willow felt like a sentence finishing itself. I told myself then that I finally understood it, that nature had a second rule hidden under the first, and I had found it at last, that I could sleep now and keep it safe in my chest. I thought I understood everything about nature, but the gray hadn't finished teaching, and the winter had one more door it meant to open. The storm came down like a wall. Snow blew sideways, a hard white that erased the trees, and then the ground, and then the edge of my own body. I told myself I would only go as far as the creek to listen to its voice under the ice, then turn back. I told myself I knew these seams by heart now. The wind laughed and took the path away. I kept walking because stopping felt like the quicker death. The drifts had a skin on them that held for a step and then dropped me to the knee. My breath turned sharp and little. It felt like breathing through a keyhole. I tried to aim for the dark seam where the alders usually show, but the world had no lines. The storm made a room with no doors. I kept moving because once, long ago, I had learned that forward is sometimes the only prayer a man has. I slipped on a crusted knot and went down hard. The shock emptied me. The cold climbed at once, not slow, not polite. I pushed up, and a white gust knocked me onto my side again. I lay there and listened to the wind chew the trees. I told myself I would count to 20 and rise. I got to 7 and lost the numbers. I put my face in my sleeve and tried to make my breath warm my own skin. The snow found the open places in my coat and settled. I thought of the gray. I thought of the creek and the bones and the wire and the way he had stood between me and teeth more than once. I tried to laugh at myself for thinking a wild thing could help me now, in weather that punished everything without choosing. The laugh was only a cough. I closed my eyes because the white was a kind of pain. A shape pressed the storm aside, not a sound, only weight and heat and the smell of fur. He stood over me first, blocking the wind with his chest like a wall I could lean my ribs against. Then he folded himself down with care and put his body along mine from shoulder to hip, the way a man puts a log against a weak fence to hold it through the night. The cold stopped climbing. It hissed at the edge and waited. His breath hit my ear in slow pushes. I put my hand into his coat and found the rough, warm underfur that survives winter. He did not flinch. He did not turn his head to check my fingers. He had made his choice before he came to me. He lay there and gave me his heat like it cost him nothing, when I knew it cost him the kind of safety a leader never throws away. I said his name, the one I never say out loud because it is only a shape in my chest, and the sound came out wrong. He answered by breathing. That was enough. Far off, under the wind, a howl rose, then another, then a braid of voices weaving through the white. It was not a question. It was a call. The pack was counting itself. He lifted his head and listened. His body did not move off mine. The voices thinned and thickened and turned like a river under ice. He put his chin down again. I felt the decision enter him and stay. He chose me. He chose me over his own. On vybrал меня, как своего. I heard inside like a bell, and then I heard it in the language my bones use. He chose me as his own. The wind came harder, as if insulted by our small fire. I slid toward sleep, the way you slide toward the edge of a pond you know is thin. I fought it because men who sleep in storms do not wake. He fought it for me by breathing big and steady, until my lungs learned the rhythm again. I swallowed ice, and the swallow woke a hard little heat in my chest that reminded me of bread and of a hare laid careful at my boots, and of a young wolf stepping into a black stream 8 winters ago and taking my scent with him into the dark. He had saved me once. He was saving me again, and the part of me that had refused miracles finally bent. Time fell off the branches like snow. The call came again, nearer this time, the edges of it sharp as wire. He raised his head and answered once, short and low, a sound that said, "I am here and do not wait for me." The reply bent away. I cried then, stupid in the cold, because the sound of him choosing me hurt more than any hunger I had known. The tears froze and cracked on my skin. He did not move. He kept me alive with his warmth and his weight and his stubbornness, as if my breath were a small pup he had decided to shield with his body from the storm. I drifted and came back and drifted again. Each time I came back, he was there, a fact against my ribs. When the wind lost its edge and the white lifted enough to find the ground, he rose and shook the ice from his coat without breaking the shelter his body had made. He nosed my collar and then braced himself so I could get my arm around his neck and rise. I put weight on him, and he held it like a duty he had always meant to have. We walked in a line that he set with his feet, and the storm admitted a path where I would have seen none. He took the shallow slopes and the seams between drifts and the short ways across the creek where the ice sounded safe. Every time I sagged, he stopped and lent me the length of him until my knees remembered. Once I nearly sat down because the sky went black at the edges, and he bumped my hip with his shoulder hard enough to wake me from the wrong sleep. He kept me to the right place like I had been born for it. We reached the birches above my cabin when the day had the thin color that comes after a hard thing has passed. He stood while I fumbled the latch with dead fingers. He watched me go inside. He did not cross the door. He is not a dog. He is not mine. He is himself. I turned to say the only words I had, "Thank you," and he was already gone, a gray shoulder sliding between trees that had not been there a breath before. I built the fire with hands that did not belong to me and sat on the floor until heat pried my bones apart. I shook. It was not cold anymore. It was something else leaving by its own door. Under the ticking of the stove I heard, or I imagined I heard, a far howl and then another, and I pictured him taking his place in the circle again, counted and counting, the pack drawing around him like breath. I slept and woke and slept and woke, and each time the room was more mine. When I could stand without the walls bending, I opened the door and the night was quiet and full. The storm had written its new lines and left. The path he had made for me through it was still there, a story across the white that would go away by morning. I put my hand against the jamb, the way a man touches a shoulder to steady himself, and I cried again, softer this time, not from fear, not from hunger, but from the plain, crushing fact of being kept alive by something that did not owe me a thing. I do not know why a wolf remembers or forgives or stays. I do not know what he asked of me at the creek when he showed me bones that had lost their names, or what he will ask of me next winter or the one after. I only know what happened in the storm. I only know the heat of his body and the weight of his choice, and the way my breath found his and followed it out of a place I should not have left. I don't believe myself. This could not be true, but I saw it with my own eyes. The wolf saved me twice, and if you ask me now whether I believe in nature's miracles, I will tell you this: nature is wiser and kinder than we are, and it remembers kindness. If your heart is full of reverence right now, write, nature is wiser than us.